Welcome back to your weekly instalment of the CeltsAreHere podcast. Declan and Quinny, double trouble. Quinny's got the Kyogo scarf on. That's because he scored another 2 goals last night. And we'll be talking about his fine goal scoring record. Since we've last been on, Quinny, we've booked ourselves for another cup final and we're still 9 points clear. And we're looking good once again after that 4-0 victory over St Mirren last night.
Yeah, great result last night, great game, and good to see Kyogo getting back in amongst double digits. Getting back into 2 goals and that kind of thing as well. Because a great game overall. I'm as high as a kite on the performance last night in a lot of ways. I did a watch along for it. I had a great time watching the game, it was a great result, a great way to kind of begin this new chapter of the season we were kind of speaking about last week. We've kind of bookmarked a part of that season coming back from the World Cup over the Christmas period. And it feels like last night was the real, the first step in this kind of chapter of the season we're walking into now.
I think that's a good point. I actually had a conversation with somebody I worked with yesterday who had said, he's a Celtic fan, but he doesn't pay too much attention to things. Use that term loosely, Celtic fan. And he was saying, what's kind of happened to us this season so far? And I said, I don't really know. I mean, we won 2-0 against Kilmarnock in the league on that Saturday, following the 2-8 draw. We've booked ourselves in a semi-final. We just, I don't really think we were up in our gear at all, Quinny. We certainly did that last night. And I think a big part of that was probably what the manager had indicated before the game was that he wanted to freshen up the side. You could see towards the end of the semi-final on Saturday that the conditions were starting to badly take it out the players. I know you were at the game like myself on Saturday. As a fan, it was rotten weather-wise when you were coming out. Thankfully, I think you were like me, that you were undercover. I know a few people who had the old single character. One of my pals was in row H and she was absolutely drenched. But we were fortunate that both you and I were undercover. But for the players, it's certainly, when you're a footballer, not the conditions you want to be playing in. When the pitch is poor, the rain's absolutely battering down on you, and the wind was swirling round. So you could see that was, taking an effect in our play. But last night, as you say, seemed to be this, don't need to call it a turning point at all, because Celtic's been absolutely flying in the league this season. It just looked to be a bit more like our old selves, probably going back to the game at Easter Road, where you saw a performance just as good as that, and we hit 4 goals again.
Yeah, I don't think, I think the performance from everyone was really faultless. I didn't at any point think this guy's not right for this game or this guy's not at it. Every single player was, and I've got ratings in front of me and all that kind of stuff, but watching the game, I wouldn't give anyone anything less than 8 out of 10 last night on,
that even includes probably the substitutes as well, Quinny, which is quite incredible to think.
James Forrest was unlucky not to get a goal from the bench, never mind obviously Moy and Turnbull and what they got up to, Haksabanovic, Maeda and whatever. I just thought from top to bottom, it was just a great performance. And the whole, like you said, the manager kind of alluded to the fact he was going to shuffle the deck coming into this game. I predicted actually that Kobayashi would have got a debut today. I was quite chuffed to see that.
I actually think you said that last week as well in the podcast. Yeah. I know I was saying I was hanging off until the Morton game, but a good shout in there, Quinny.
Well, what that kind of was born from is see if you look at the last spell where Starfelt came back into the team and Jens was playing good. Mm-hmm. Starfelt played Real Madrid and then he missed a game. Jens started and then Starfelt played again. And then the game after that was the St Mirren match. And if you look at it, you see that, Starfelt played 60 minutes in that game. But what you don't see is that Jens started that game again through choice and he had to come off by injury. So that was the kind of and the manager's comments around that time was around something to the effect of the defenders have different attributes. And one of the things that Jens brings that probably Starfelt didn't to him in his mind at that point was be able to carry the ball out from the back on that left side of defence. And when you see what Kobayashi did last night, I watched the game live on the channel and I was waxing lyrical. If you paid attention to Kobayashi last night, for me, and you see the passes he was able to, the passing lanes he was able to slice balls through all the way through the match, and you don't understand how badly or how much that's going to make us better when everything else is on song, then I don't know what you've been watching this season so far, because Starfelt equally, I think that's the best game I've seen him play domestically. It didn't put a foot wrong, didn't put a pass out of place.
And he was at right centre half.
and he was at right centre half, and he swept everything up. And he's a wee bit more willing than Carter Vickers to cross the halfway line with the ball. Didn't really see too much of that last night, to be honest. But I've been, I'd probably say I've been one of Starfelt's critics, certainly, in terms of being in the best 11. But when you see him play in that position there, he was absolutely impeccable. He wasn't caught on the left side thinking about taking a touch, and then I come on the inside, I play the fullback, getting caught in 2 or 3 minds. He's over there. He feels much more natural. He puts in an amazing performance, and I think Kobayashi breezed through the game. I think there was 1 or 2 50-50 situations where he didn't cover himself in glory. But as I say, when he was on the ball, even his decision making, he never dived in. He never got caught totally. He maybe didn't win the duel, as it were, but he would recover position, and Starfelt would come and sweep with him. And I thought that was great to see 2 centre backs, in a configuration we've never seen.
I'd say to my cousin last night at the game, just looking at it, it was almost like a breath of fresh air to see that left centre back not having to take that touch that Starfelt always kind of needs, Quinny, because he likes to kind of pivot back into his right foot, which is just only natural. If you're a right-footed player playing the left-sided position, you're going to have to do that. But I totally agree with you, and that Starfelt looked far more comfortable at right centre back for majority of his Celtic career in that partnership with Cameron Carter-Vickers. I know people would say, Starfelt looks good because Vickers is there. I still think he's a decent footballer. I think that partnership's been integral to us, but it was like a breath of fresh air last night just to see how comfortable it is to have that left-sided centre half. I remember having this conversation with somebody on the board at Celtic just after he'd signed, and we'd been talking about how difficult it was to get left-footed defenders, in general left-footed players. But as someone who watches English football, I know I don't try and allude to this too much on here. When I've watched Lisandro Martinez, for instance, going at Manchester United, they've looked a lot more balanced in there, just because he's obviously naturally left-footed. So yeah, we saw that last night, but I totally agree with you. I think that's a really good place to start with Yuki Kobayashi. Looks really composed in the ball. Incredible to think he's only 22. I say only because I'm still 22, and I'm starting to get to that point, Quinny, that I've alluded to, that Celtic players are starting to become younger than me, and I can start using the word son at the football, which I don't like. And when they're making it and whatever else. So a top
It's a funny
performance
feeling,
from
isn't
him.
it?
It is a weird feeling, absolutely is. I don't know how many people on here have that crossover. They might have over the years, but no, Kobayashi I thought was terrific, and much like what the manager was saying when I asked him at the presser the other day about Maeda and Hatate, Kobayashi's going to be in that bracket that they're only going to get better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was great to see as well, because on that left hand side there was at least 2, maybe 3 passes that he played down the left channel that Rio was on the front foot getting onto, and that was a few of our good kind of attacking plays, particularly in the second half, when they were St Mirren, by the way, in my opinion, are top 4 opponents that we've played in the league this year.
In terms of game plan, absolutely, I would agree there. I thought possibly after we went 1 up after Abada scored, they maybe, they chucked it a wee bit in terms of their game plan, but they're certainly very dangerous with the long throw-ins that they try and do. They're well organised, they were compact at times when they needed to be, and even just kind of touching back what we were saying about freshening the team up, Quinny, you were saying about every player probably in around a solid 8. It shows how far our side have come since they defeated us 2-0, because on that day they were absolutely deserving of the win in Paisley, but it just shows where we've came from, and actually looking at that side that lost the game 2-0 at Paisley, many players in the team like Moy, who was criticised that day and whatnot, are some of our top performers at this point in time. So it shows how far the team have come. But on St Mirren, I would agree, and that's been around the basis of Stephen Robinson taking a lot of the core players that he had at Motherwell. But no, back to St Mirren, the opponent. The reason why I think we won 4-0 as well is they had a go. They didn't try to come and play what people have dubbed as terrorist football and sit in and bore everybody to death. They actually had a good go.
Yeah, for sure. And that was what gave us a little bit of that kind of space to run into for some of these balls to actually come off for them. And when you see that line being hit so often, and you get Rio on the front foot running at defences with Jota on the left, Kyogo coming in shorter running in behind, and then whoever else is up in support, or O'Reilly or an Abada who started the game, then that's the sort of attacking threat we want to see these kind of players getting into. And equally as well, he switched the ball from left centre-back to right-back beautifully a few times for Alistair Johnson, who was taking out really good positions high on the right-hand side. And I felt quite, I didn't feel bad for him necessarily. He had a great game, but he could not get across you couldn't get across off the deck for the most part, and he couldn't beat the first man, unfortunately. But
looks very comfortable though, Johnson, doesn't he? Just really seamless. Again, it's quite incredible to think you've thrown in, two defenders who had never played in the back four together, and they just both didn't look out of place, and also gave Ange Postecoglou that option at playing Juranovic at left back, because you already had that cover in there with Kobayashi. And again, I think Juranovic over the past two games, Quinny, is somebody who has touted to leave the club this window, looks absolutely fine. He's given you all, and that's all you can really ask for.
He plays left back like he did last night. Like he looks like a £15 million right back, when he plays that. And the big part of that is, like, for him, his attributes and what makes Juranovic so good for us in our system is how good he is on the ball, how composed he is, how strong he is in possession. And when he's playing that inverted fullback role, and we see how wild Taylor is, and what I mean by wild is he ends up everywhere, attacking mid, right wing, centre forward. And Juranovic is cool with doing that. And what we see, just the way Celtic have played, is, anyone who's listening to this will have noticed, Rio Hatate then becomes kind of almost a left back in terms of the actual geography on the pitch. He's the one peeling out into that wide space. And having a left footer that can find him on that channel, as well as having Juranovic coming in as a midfielder there who's got the right foot to be playing out there as well.
For the overload.
It gives Jota and it gives Rio fantastic service on that side. And I think, like, I've got Juranovic as the top scoring player in the match, 100 out of 100, done everything perfectly well last night. And he's at left back, that's like, that's a centre back making his debut. That's a right back not long in the door. That's Starfelt playing right centre back. And then we can't move away from the defence without saying probably one of his best games of the season also was the goalkeeper, Joe Hart. 2 great saves, maybe 3.
He was somebody I was actually going to start off with today, because, we had a conversation, you and I, about him after the Rangers game. And I think that the criticism, at that point was fair, just in terms of talking about the bigger picture about his, that moment at Ibrox when, he gets caught with the ball under his foot. It seemed to have given the home team a bit of belief, and it's not what you're looking for from an experienced player in a derby game. I think that's a very fair criticism to make. Completely. We were looking at the bigger picture of when the contract was running up, Quinny, and how this team progresses, because you and I and every Celtic fan wants us to be the best we can be. That's about evolving. It's not about hanging on to players for too long, that they overstay their welcome and whatever else, or that they deteriorate as you're at the club. In terms of Joe Hart, though, the past 2 previous games, he has been absolutely outstanding. And, at the weekend, I know he didn't get man of the match. He had a real big impact in the match. And without him on Saturday, I don't think any player in the pitch on Saturday, apart from the goal scorers, has made a bigger impact on the game as Joe Hart. I thought he was outstanding against Kilmarnock. He made some really big saves. I'm thinking about that one in the second half when he gets down. Really top saving. And last night, the one from Ayunga in the first half, and then the one down the other end in the second half. Really, really 2 strong performances, which is, I think, what we expect of Joe Hart, but he delivered again. And, I said when we were having that discussion a couple of weeks back, his experience was important. We know how good a player he can be, and he showed that in the past 2 previous games. So I think, as I say, what we said at the time about that particular isolated incident was fair, but, absolutely no issue in saying 2 top performances from the goalkeeper.
Yeah, totally. And like the save right at the end from Curtis, man, that volley he took right at the very end, like that was a fantastic save, good reflexes. And the thing with goalkeepers that, like Ange always kind of says when he talks about Joe Hart, is you want a guy you can believe in, just to play in the game. And like, if this guy's called upon, I know he's going to be his best and he's going to do his best, and his best is normally going to be good enough. And it's games like that is where you see that from Joe Hart, where it's like, that defence is crying out for a clean sheet this year. We've got a great defensive record, but it's very rare we leave a game with a clean sheet this year. So at the dying embers of the game, that's what, let's score a goal for somebody like him. It's pulling a save out like that are even more vital, And I just thought before, the defence, that whole backbone that we just went through was like the foundation of everything I was super happy about watching last night, because everything was clean, everything was crisp, nobody was in two minds. The symmetry was great across the team from there. It does start from the goalkeeper ultimately, and the build-up as well. Joe Hart was used quite well. And also with his saves as well, keeping the clean sheet and getting that over the line for us as well. Great performance, Big Joe.
And even looking at the game in Saturday, Quinny, I didn't particularly think, even Cameron Carter-Vickers, who's practically a nailed on 7 or 8 every week, didn't have his best game in the semi-final. I think the conditions, as I say, played a big part in that. But when you've got him behind you, it just gives you that wee bit of confidence. And a cup game, as we know, can, at any point, you can get knocked out of a cup. You don't know what the hell can happen in a cup competition.
Exactly.
And it's, in moments like that, you need your goalkeeper to have big moments. And even last night, as you say, St Mirren aren't a bad opposition. I know they had the ball in the back of the net first with that offside correctly given. It is offside. It could be a different game then, but we don't know. We know Celtic, that's happened before, and we've come back and trounced teams. It's as if you're kind of hitting a big bear with a stick when you do that. But no, top marks to Joe Hart. And just, not to skip ahead too quickly, because we're only quarter an hour into this, but do you think during the weekend that because it's a cup, the manager might change it? But no secret, has been out with a calf injury. But does he go back to Scott Bain? It's not a conversation I thought I'd be having this conversation, but do you see Scott Bain maybe getting a wee outing against Morton in the cup?
Goalkeeper wise, whoever's if Seagrass, who knows what's going on with him? I don't think there's any real official reporting, is there? But yeah, I think the goalkeeper
it's a calf injury. Calf injury, as far as I know. Yeah, and obviously Toby's went to Cork City as well, so it's only Scott Bain or Connor Hazard.
Yeah,
is there
maybe Hazard? Option? I don't know, but I could definitely see him giving Joe Hart the weekend off for sure. Maybe he keeps him in because again, goalkeepers you maybe want to keep them in tempo, but like. The manager's comments after the game, and again, we'll get onto the midfield shortly, but he was asked a question like this after the match, and his response was something to the tune of, the sentiment was the players that finished the game well, that were the players in this match that I chose to give minutes to did well enough to get more minutes. And that makes me think Turnbull will probably play at the weekend, as well as Moy, Haksabanovic, Kobayashi, and maybe one or two others. So in terms of the goalkeeper, I think that would probably fall into that. As well, the Greenock game, with the greatest of respect to Greenock, and I'm from Dumbarton, so I don't really give Greenock too much respect at the best of times. But we can definitely rotate the goalkeeper. I think if the manager, so the rest of the team should be strong enough to get us over the line. You would think immaterial. I could be the goalkeeper, like in theory.
As long as the two centre halves is as good a game, you'd be absolutely fine. I think I'd still go with the crossbar. So I don't know if I'd
against Greenock, I must add, as a caveat.
Listen, a corner and big Effie Ambrose in your team, you never know what can happen, So, So we'll see what happens. People might be thinking, no, the Declan's at it again, but be Hart wanting to drop him after praising him. But it's not that case at all. It's a cup game. We appear to be a team who likes to rotate our goalkeeper in the cup. It's a squad game, and that might be something that the manager thinks about. So yeah, there's your defence and goalkeeper covered. Let's go straight up top with Kyogo. Quiet game at the weekend. Again, we know why it was difficult out there, and you're not getting a lot of service.
Well, he did get 1 or 2 ruled out, didn't he?
Yeah, he did get 1 or 2 ruled out. We'll try and stay away from Val, but
Well, I was going to say earlier on,
last night was quite surprising. Although I think probably
when you mentioned the St Mirren goal, I was like, "Oh, really?" The St Mirren goal. I was watching it live. I'm like, "Man, that looks onside to me." Because
from watching sports scene, he is off. I've had a wee watch of sports scene. Actually, VAR-wise last night, pretty faultless. I think the only thing that's starting to really annoy people now is every time you score, it's a check, and it's taking far too long. And I think people are starting to get to that frustrated point now, Quinny, that we're 3 months in, come this weekend of it, and we're no further on at all. And the ref standing with his earpiece in, waiting for, a minute to 2 minutes, just takes the thrill out of it, I think, for people. You could see that last night, that people were getting visibly frustrated. I was getting frustrated with it, and thinking, how can that be offside? So that takes it out the game. But again, it's something that's there.
So, if you don't mind me asking, Declan, because I never seen sports, I only watched it on Celtic TV. What is the what is the plan with VAR? Is it clear and obvious errors? Is it what did they say and that kind of stuff or anything?
Nah,
What is the actual mantra that they're now singing? Do we know?
I don't really know. I really don't know. I mean, 3 months in, I don't think we're any further forward this. And, to mention his name on here, Charlie Nicholas, who is someone I don't agree with too often, but he wrote quite a decent piece the other day. And he's called, really speaking out against VAR. Scottish football's got the cheapest version of this. We're not really giving the refs he thinks we're not giving the refs a chance. With that in mind, I think they're incompetent. I think they're really poor standard of referees. And I think as a mixture, that's why it's so bad, Quinny. The technology is the cheapest technology that they've got. And the refereeing standard along with that is just a recipe for disaster, which we've seen played out. And I know it take precedent at the weekend. Derek McInnes's comments seem to be the one getting drawn to with the Giakoumakis one at the very end of the game, which I think probably could be a penalty. But again, if we're going to talk about consistency on here, we were denied something similar with Alston in a derby game. So if we're going to talk about consistency, then it's not a penalty in terms of that. But the one that the rule I'm still not convinced about, I don't know if you share this, is when an opposition player plays the ball back if the player's offside and he puts it into the back of the net. That appears to now be offside, and that rule's never been offside. That's twice it's happened to Celtic. There be a bad against Dundee United and Hatate at the weekend.
Yeah, I would definitely have been done with that. The Abada one I remember being wildly frustrated about. But again, it's just it depends on what song sheet they're reading off of, because it seems to be it felt like for a while with they were picking the rule that suited them at that time, and saying, oh, it's this, because the handball stuff that they've chalked us for is not clear and obvious errors and whatever, if that makes sense. So that's why I was wondering, because again, when I was looking at the St Mirren offside, I thought, that's not a clear and obvious thing like to interfere with. Is that do they interfere with it because it involves a goal and they have to get the goal right? So that's just the only thing from last night. I wasn't too sure if there was any kind of clarity added on to that kind of situation. But Kyogo's goals, both of them get checked by VAR. They were all clean as they come. And, both finishes, man. The first one is like right out of the Kyogo textbook. And the second one is like vintage Celtic talisman.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the first one, and let's talk about the record overall. I know there's been much debate in recent weeks about Kyogo and Giakoumakis. I'm certainly one who thinks that Kyogo is the best striker at the club. I know there's a lot of people who don't think he's a centre forward. I think he is. I think he's a very good striker. 17 goals in 20 games in the league is an outstanding record. It's 18 goals over the course of the season. But just looking at those league goals, 17 and 20 is a ridiculous record for someone who's supposedly not a centre forward. And as you say, the first one is outrageous. It's not as good as that League Cup final goal when he does something pretty similar, but it's absolutely phenomenal. And firstly, before we even go to Kyogo on it, the ball from Hatate, you've been talking about, him drifting into those wide areas, and then the ball that he plays round the defender is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how he does that. It's all about, the intelligence of these players. But the ball to Kyogo, firstly, outstanding. And then the finish, I didn't think it was getting in. And it seemed to hang in the air for an age. It hung in the air for an age, and it drops in. What a goal. What a goal.
Yeah, absolutely stunning. And it's great to see, like, from all involved, because again, I think like the build-up play before the play that sets the Hatate off is like some of the stuff we've already spoke about in the podcast, And so, yeah, it was a sublime goal from start to finish. And Kyogo, like, for some of the criticism he's come in for this season, and obviously his record now looks exceptional, a goal like that speaks above numbers. A guy that has the ability to do that, like it says, talisman stuff, it's like the leader of the team. And he came out of the game, and, the kind of circles that I kind of mix in, a lot of people are messaging me, like, how did Kyogo not complete one pass in this match? And when you look at the game and how it went, and when you look at how St Mirren lined up, he ran that whole game. And again, from watching it on TV, I don't suppose I'll have a full appreciation of this versus anyone at the stadium. But he's just been running across that back line the whole game, running channels, making runs, keeping them busy, trying to create space. So the guys in midfield and defence have got 2 or 3 extra yards to move into to find an angle or whatever. And to get those goals off the back of that work ethic without getting touches of the ball, without being involved in link-up play, sublime. You would expect that from Giakoumakis, would you not?
Yeah, you would. Clinical striker, all that stuff. And, that was something, I think, again, it was very fairly aimed at the team throughout the Champions League. But, when you're wanting a player to be in that position, you want to put the ball in the back of the net.
That's it.
And he certainly did that. What do you think he can hit this season, Quinny? I think we've got 16 games left. I think he can hit 30 goals this season.
He's got to be looking at 30.
And
he's going to start every game he's fit.
That's
You've got to put him down for a goal a game, and
hopefully
you kind of do at this point.
Aye. So you think so? 30? That your big shout for this week? 16 games remaining. Kyogo to hit 30 goals. I hope so. I think that'd be fantastic. I'd like to see a hat trick amongst them. I don't think he's hit a hat trick for Celtic this season as of yet. Oh, he has. Scored a hat trick up at Dundee United. I'm talking rubbish. But yeah, the league record is ridiculous. I think overall we'll hit them. It'd be very nice if we get a couple in the cup final just to kind of get closer to that mark. But he scored 20 goals last season, didn't he? So he's two off what he hit last season, and he's got plenty of time. He's got the full Scottish Cup card to do that, a cup final and 16 games remaining in the league to hit that. So
plenty
go
of
on,
time.
wee man. Plenty of time.
Go on, wee man, indeed.
Absolutely. But, you've mentioned another striker, Giakoumakis, who at the weekend, I can't fault the big man for everything that's going around. Rumour mill at this point in time. He's coming off the bench at the weekend. I know last night, because he wasn't on the bench, people, came to that conclusion right away. I partly maybe thought that myself, that was, Himovsky. Didn't say that until I heard what the manager had to say, and he mentioned that both he and Cameron Carter-Vickers were out after the weekend. I know Giakoumakis came off the bench they featured, but they'd pulled up a wee bit sore after the weekend, so went to leave out. But he was quite bullish, Ange Postecoglou, after the game in terms of, defending that, at this point in time, Quinny, if he's fit, Giakoumakis will be involved in the squad on Saturday and will likely get game time. And that is, at this point, what we expect, because they're still contracted to the club and they're still Celtic players.
Totally. And that totally falls in with everything the manager's done. Emotions don't really come into it with him, to a great extent. It is quite clinical in that respect, where he'll make the best decision at the time. And it's, it's business, it's not personal, as they say in the mob, so the manager doesn't do his contract negotiations. He's not paying his wages. He's there to coach the team and win a match. And if he's an available asset, he's still going to use him. And that's good to hear, that there isn't any sour milk, or there's not any, kind of stink going on, which is great, because there has been little, and again, I listen to as much Celtic media stuff as I possibly can from a lot of great channels out there. And I've definitely heard somebody talk about recently the fact that maybe he was an outcast in the team, or not quite in with the main group of the training sessions and stuff. I forget exactly where I picked that one up, but it's good to hear that the manager doesn't feel that, or there's no kind of real or any material substance to that at this point. Other than sentiment.
If everything that we read is true around players, from your cousin's barber's neighbour that Ange says that you get your info from. If he is going to leave this January, he's in the short window just now. So if that's the case, it only benefits players. Spoke about Juranovic here, who's another one of these guys in that category. It only benefits players to be playing out their skin and having top performances. And just these are the comments here, Quinny. When he was asked about whether he would still be part of the squad, he said, I see no reason why not. I just deal with what is in front of me, and until I'm told otherwise or something significant happens. He was here tonight, mate, so you could have asked him yourself. So he just batted that away. A first-class baseball player. Hit that right out the park. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. He's still very much part of the team, and it should benefit him that, at the weekend he was, we're talking about a current Celtic player. He came off the bench, he scored the goal. It was an important goal. I already mentioned that he was kind of caught up in that penalty controversy, as I say, consistency. If you're not going to give one, you can't give that one. And, it was a typical Giakoumakis in the right place at the right time moment.
That's it. It was a great goal for him, and it all happened right in front of me, and it felt like it did feel like a bit of a bye, and obviously I didn't play last night, so I think a lot of us will infer that means it is curtains, but we'll see. The Japanese league starts exactly in 1 month from today, if he has to go to Urawa. The other link he's got is to Atlanta United. They've just released a guy called Joseph Martinez, who's like their biggest ever player. He's like, won them cups, top goal scorer in all time. He's went to Miami. So they're the two teams hotly linked to him. Both their seasons are not imminent. They're not starting tomorrow. And the kind of last reports I picked up was that, Celtic, the last reports I heard, or the first reports I heard about the Urawa thing, it said it was expected in Japan in a few weeks. And from what we've seen and what we've heard, it kind of does feed into the narrative that there's no real rush to push Giakoumakis out the door. There is people interested. He's probably going to get a deal done. And here, we've got another 2 weeks to sort it out. And there's still some football games to be won.
Aye. There's plenty of time left. We're recording this to the 19th of January. If he's going to be involved in the weekend, you're looking at the kind of last full week in January. And you know what the transfers can be like, when you can be in the last day and a deal can get done. So until that big clock chimes 12 on the 31st of January, we know then that, nothing is done and complete. But the manager certainly, it's twice that he said it again last night. He is hopeful of bringing in another player, and you would assume at this time, whether Giakoumakis goes or stays, it probably will be a striker.
Yeah, I think that's the main spot that now that needs filled, is because we've seen Maeda come off the bench for Kyogo and run that kind of second striker job, and like we've all kind of spoke about the potential he's got to do that. And I think in the short to immediate term, like, there's no problem with that. James Forrest is in great form and great fettle. Haksabanovic is coming back, and Jota and Abada are alive and kicking. So that's 6 players for 3 positions. Like, there is not a great immediate urgency. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah,
they're all good words.
That's right.
To go and get somebody, but obviously there is a need and a desire. But it is about the right person and the right profile and all that kind of thing. I think Jota played well last night. I thought he played well on the weekend as well. Not his best, but he's definitely getting back there. The step overs still work. He still can pass a ball. He can still do all those basic stuff. We've not seen much magic from him, and I mean like real Jota magic. Since we've come back from the World Cup, but it feels like he's going up the gears, and he looked pretty good last night. And I was quite impressed with Abada as well. Felt like he had a good kind of 20 minutes in the game where he was really causing it and could have got a couple. And yeah, I was quite happy with the forwards overall. So I don't feel that, like, even with Forrest and Haksabanovic, when they come on, Forrest could add a goal as well. It was chopped off, rightly or wrongly. We could talk about that if you want. But like, I say 6 players to 3 positions. What's the rush? And we still have Giakoumakis.
That's it. He's still there, and as I say, it's not a case that he's there and he's sitting in a huff and he's got his arms folded. He's coming on, and he's the weekend previous against Killie, he put in a shift when he came on. He was unlucky. I think he hit the post twice. He came on at the weekend. He scored against Killie. He's missed out in the St Mirren game. I think if he's fit, you'll see him against Morton. And again, it'd be nice to see him get on the score sheet. Bit cryptic again on the old social media. I wish somebody would take his phone off him, because I think he's causing a wee bit of stir with that. On to another cup final. People are going, oh, does that mean he's staying? And then enjoy every minute like it's your last. Oh, does that mean he's leaving? So I wish somebody would just take the big man's phone off him. But again, whether he's a Celtic player, we'll talk about him as a Celtic player. Quinton Whaley's scoring for us, we'll be happy, because he certainly played a part in our position at this point in time, being 9 points clear. And just to look at that position overall, somebody put up the graphic on Twitter last night. I think Lint on Twitter, as he's at, and it was looking at Celtic after 22 games in the league. So this time last year, about a week short of last year, we went to Tynecastle. We won the game 2-1. If you remember right, Matt O'Reilly made his debut for Celtic. He was outstanding. Rio Hatate scored an absolute bullet from about 25, 30 yards. And Giakoumakis...
Was that a year ago to the now?
It's nearly a year ago. In a week's time, it's a year ago, but it's 22 games.
Wow. 22
league games, and incredibly, the swing is 13 points since then, Quinny. So when we went to Tynecastle on that game, there we go, I've got it here. So at this point in time, Celtic sit on 61 points. Rangers are in 52, 9-point advantage there, with a plus 23 goal difference. If you go to last season after 22 games, Celtic were on 51 points. Rangers were on 55 points after 22 games. Celtic had a plus 3 goal difference. So we're 20 goals better off, and there's a 13-point swing in there, which says a lot about this team at this point in time.
That's a great kind of comparison, against each other. A great contrast. And, I put a big smile on my face because I remember watching that game. I watched that game, little silly story I'll tell for 10 seconds, but like, I watched that game on my phone while camping on an island in Loch Lomond with, a tent, got a boat and all that stuff.
Must have been freezing in January time.
I was pretty drunk, so
like... well, you'll be all right then. You don't feel the cold if you're drunk. I wish I was at Hampden on Saturday, by the way. I might have felt my toes a bit.
It was a good one. It was one of those islands where, what's the animals that are on them again? The Australian ones. What do you call them again? Yeah. Wallop? No, what?
There's not going to be kangaroos in Loch Lomond.
No, it's not a kangaroo. What's the other one?
I don't want to embarrass myself here.
Somebody can drop it in the comment section. I forget the name of the animal, but there's an Australian animal. It's not word of a lie. I've seen them.
Okay.
Is that a wallaby? Is that what you call it?
I don't know if we get wallabies in Scotland. I don't know.
You do, mate. I promise.
Okay.
An island on Loch Lomond, I promise you. Wallaby. I'm sure it's wallaby. Anyway, so I watched that game there, so I've got good memories of that game. I think I did pretty well on fantasy football as well and had a good time overall. So, yeah, great contrast. And, like, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about when we see this progress in the team. And, yeah, we're still beating, like, St Mirren. The end score was 4-0. Kilmarnock was 2-0. And, like, I think there was actually, like, 4 goals in the Kilmarnock game as well. But we're getting into that vibe of getting 3s and 4s back on the scoreline again. And last season, we only started to find that form towards the back end, like we're speaking about. So we've enjoyed a season of like having a good effort towards, pushing those standards that we've been crying out for, particularly on this podcast, And Hatate was a huge part of making that happen last night. And I think somebody who had a great game last night, but did not impact the match thoroughly, was probably Matt O'Reilly. Like, again, that might kind of raise some eyebrows or whatever. He didn't really put a foot wrong. He didn't. And again, like the thing with
much
O'Reilly,
like Callum McGregor, he's quiet about his business, but he makes a big impact in the game.
It's just faultless. He just didn't do anything wrong. He didn't really grab the game by the scruff of the neck, make many shots or anything like that. But he was in the right place to link up with people, and he was putting other people in position all the time. Johnson and Abada, particularly on the right, there was a great kind of triangle going on between those three. And I thought, like that's all that backbone going together, and. Yeah, it's a great contrast from this year to last. It's such a huge, stark difference already. And I don't even think we're in 4th gear yet. No Carter Vickers last night,
No, and that's interesting thing. And that's what I was kind of hinting at, at the start of this, that, using the terminology, a turning point last night, so the right phrase at all. But it seemed as if Celtic just went up that wee extra gear last night that we were yet to see in 2022, 2023. And I've just checked out there so that in case there's any David Attenborough lovers in the comments, Quinny, wallabies are wee kangaroos. So it wasn't the wallabies. So we'll need to find out what animal this is. You'll need to try and work it out, and then you can get back to anybody that comments on it. But that isn't our main issue now. But it's a stark contrast. And even, Rangers won 1-0 that midweek that we're talking about, and Celtic were 4 points behind them. Obviously, the Derby game comes after that. We beat Dundee United late on with Rangers drawn, and then the swing comes then. But 13-point swing after 22 games a season apart, plus 20 goals on that is ridiculous. And the other thing, to bring in some more stats, Celtic have lost 1 game in the league in 54 in the league. 1 in 54 matches. That is, if you look at, it's not far off. Was it 69 games Brendan Rodgers' team went undefeated? It was
like a season and a half at least.
So that would indicate, us going to the end of this season, and obviously that was domestically as a whole. We're not in that position, but it's still really impressive in terms of the league games. I'll need to have a look back to see how many games Brendan actually went undefeated in the league. Obviously 38 games in a season is invincibles, and then just to build the league games into that, but a really impressive record, that 1 in 54, Quinny, and even more impressive record to pull another one out the hat here. Celtic last lost a midweek game in May 2016.
Beautiful. I love a midweek.
That's ridiculous, isn't it? When you think about it. May 2016.
What a great statistic, eh?
So that's, hopefully that continues on to this May, and that'll be 7 years. I mean, what a time, in the league, that is absolutely, that's baffling to think, over the course of how many games you'll play midweek in the league.
Totally. Because it's always like, well, I know last night we were at home, but quite often it is an away fixture, and it may be like Ross County or
Motherwell,
Aberdeen, or something like these kind of things. So it's not always plain sailing is showing up at home, kind of thing. But also just thinking about the contrast from, this point in the calendar against last year. That was also last year off the back of like a Europa League campaign where like a lot of these guys were transferring in and out, international duties, whatever. And the results that we're seeing this season, we've had to jam in a Champions League campaign on top of that as well.
A tighter Champions League campaign as well, Quinny, because that was something me and you spoke a lot about on here in the first part of the season.
Yeah.
Was the calendar being so different because of where the World Cup was, that one of the biggest impacts you and I thought had in Celtic's Champions League campaign was it being our first time in the competition. And for instance, that back-to-back with Leipzig happens within, I think, 6 days. It's not even a week. I think we play them over there the Wednesday, then we have them at Celtic Park on the Tuesday, which is a really quick transition to having a Champions League. The competition wrapped up first week in November. Would I be correct in saying that? Yeah, because we played Madrid at the very start of November. So building all that in, very, very difficult. So I think that's another very good point that you make there against tougher oppositions when you've not got that ability to possibly. We didn't rotate in the Europa League, but you could see at times, where the squad was, it wasn't the best of shapes. But yeah, it's a really good point. And where the World Cup is, I was standing there on Saturday at Hampden thinking, bloody hell, anybody that's against summer football here must be absolutely off their rocker. Because, as I say, footballers don't want to play in those type of conditions. Generally, this would be the kind of time we'd be coming back to the football. It was freezing last night at Celtic Park. Through COVID, I would have bitten your hand off to be at Celtic Park on a cold night like that. But when the option could possibly on the table to have some form of summer football, I don't know why it's not considered. And you could see that, the Hampden pitch just wasn't up to it at all for a January game, which they need to get sorted out for next month. I don't know how they sort that out. Whether they rip it up and start again as the old Orange Juice song goes, or they do something magic, spray something on it that, some sort of strange toxins to sort it out. But, not to make this a grass cutting podcast, Quinn, the pitch was atrocious for a national stadium, a semi-final spectacle at a national stadium.
Yeah, it definitely didn't help at all. And like in terms of the summer football thing, the only thing I would say like would make me kind of in favour of that kind of thing primarily is like, I don't think you can. I'm a dad, right? I've got 2 kids. I don't think it can be underestimated how in the summer months, if I could go and take my 2 boys to like a Dumbarton match or something like that, and it's like a £5 for the 2 of them and a £10 for me to get in. I don't live in Dumbarton, right? But just as an example,
you put them through that.
Listening to this. No, but you know what I mean? Like but you know what I mean? Like if you live somewhere like Dumbarton or Montrose or Arbroath or whatever,
it probably
and it's summer and
to
it's
people.
Nice weather.
Aye, and it probably appeals to people that aren't even that big football fans. I mean, one team I've been keeping an eye on is Queen's Park, and the Championship. Queen's Park's when I'm thinking, with the hipsters over there in Shoreland and whatever else. I like to hang out over there sometimes myself, but I wouldn't count myself as a hipster boy. But people like, I've got along to the football today. It's a nice day and whatever else. I think it would even encourage people out with it.
And you've got a family, that's like a great wee afternoon session. It's an easy one. Take the kids to the football. It's a nice day. It's just down the road. You don't need to go too far. Yeah. So I think rural Scotland, or not rural, but outside, Celtic and Rangers,
I know what point you're getting
probably
at,
see an increase in attendance.
Aye, I know what point you're getting at. But back to our Alan Titmarsh conversation, the pitch was atrocious.
Yes, it definitely was. It didn't help. And like, from where I was sitting, to be honest with you, like I've been to Hampden, I think that was my 4th visit, right? And that's the first time I've always been in with the Celtic fans, right? But I don't know what it is or where I've been sitting. But on Wednesday there, or Saturday, whatever day it was, sorry, I missed kickoff because I went to like the wrong part and I had to come back out and round again, like to get to the right turnstile. And I missed kickoff and I must have got into the game like 1 minute in or something. And I was in the East Stand, like with like the main Celtic kind of, the Celtic end as it was.
I think you were never close to me. I was in F1.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think you were that far from me. Check the ticket.
I was in F1.
There we go. Same section.
F1, aye, so same bit. Well, so I was late. I've never come into Hampden in that side ever. I don't know where else I've been sitting or whatever. But I was late, mate. Night time. I know it was raining. The weather was awful. The pitch was awful, right? But I say I've never come in Hampden that side before, and I come up the stairs, and you know what it's like at that bit. Anyone who's been there, you come up, and as soon as you get there, you see the top row straight away, and then it's just like this big bowl. You just see all the fans all the way out and round, under the floodlights, under the rain and all that. And as I came up, Celtic are on the pitch, we're playing good, passing the ball around and all that. And I've always hated Hampden, right? But I'm telling you, see the first 10 minutes I got into that game, honestly, it was a great feeling. I was totally buzzing. I was singing like mad as well.
Starting to become a Hampden convert.
Oh, mate, I was like, I get it, man. I was almost like, I don't mind saying, like, but I was thinking about, like, family members I've got that are no longer with me and stuff like that, stories they told me and stuff like that. And like I say, I had a real good first 10 minutes there. I was really happy to be there. I felt really, like, kind of present in the thing, if I can say such a thing and not sound like an idiot. But, like, I loved it. But Hampden, overall, I do hate it, and I wish they would change it. But when I had that little moment, I thought, like, oh, this is what old Hampden might have had a bit of a feel of. And then this is, like, obviously I'm only of a certain age. I don't remember these other things, but yeah, from the moment I set eyes on Hampden, why do they have a track? Why are we so far away from the pitch? Why is this? It's so many things wrong with it, like top to bottom. And in relative terms, in the history of football, it's not an old stadium anymore. They did spend money on it not that long ago. It's like, who thought this was an idea at any point in time? It's just mental. So yeah, I think the pitch is probably the least of its problems, but it's a huge one.
Yeah, I think it's a simple thing to get right, and it certainly wasn't that. And the surface should be good. My relationship with Hampden's quite mixed. Going there, my first ever game there, Celtic get beat 2-0 with Ross County in the Scottish Cup semi-final, and Neil Lennon's first game in charge at Hampden as a Celtic boss. Wee bit mixed. First League Cup final we get beat with Rangers, so again it was looking very bleak for me. Then we won the Scottish Cup against Motherwell, and then a lot of really good memories there, especially under Brendan Rodgers, latterly under Neil Lennon. Winning trophies there, the first one under Ange too, and as someone who goes to every Scotland game, every home Scotland game, really good nights here recently. So I would say kind of in recent years I've started to come round to the place a wee bit, but I certainly agree with Quinny that there's a lot of improvements that could be made. Firstly, bringing the fans closer to the park. But again, when you look at, not to defend the situation that they were in, when you look at the funding Wembley and some of the other stadiums got the Millennium too compared to Hampden get the least funding. I don't know who came up with that idea, as you say, with the track and all that stuff.
Because surely that costs money. Who spends money on a track? Like,
it should be a football venue first. And, with Queen's Park out of there now, you've not got a team playing on it every weekend. I know Willie Hockey and others have looked to make improvements to it, which I think would be very much welcomed. I think there's a team in Gem. I don't know if it's one of the Berlin clubs who had a similar situation and then kind of brought the pitch forward with whatever they kind of dug into the ground with the seats and whatnot, because it's quite funny until you actually get to remember this. We doing the tour years ago. See the upper stand and the south stand, that is across from where we would have been in the main stand. It isn't until you get up there that you're actually at ground level, because you're dug in. You obviously, when you go into Hampden, you go upstairs and walk down. It's not until that you're up at that level that you're actually at ground level again when you're in the National Stadium. So quite interesting in terms of that. A lot of good history there by Celtic, obviously, but I agree with you. There's a lot of improvements that could be made. But listen, with the amount of times that we've won trophies there over the years, I won't grumble about it, because a lot of good football memories there. There's a lot of special football memories in general for people there. That's why it should be in better nick. It's quite nice. When I was in the Bernabeu doing the tour and having a look around, Glasgow's there twice as 2 of the European Cups, which Madrid obviously won. You'll remember that Zidane goal at Hampden. There's others too. The game, the first one that I'm talking about there from 1960, when they beat on track Frankfurt 7-3, I think it was. That's when Steen went along and get this idea of how to play football. One of his ideas of how to play football, around the pivot with the centre half and blah blah blah, and the rest is history. So it should be in better nick as a national stadium. As I say, I think the pitches are least of our expectations, and even that wasn't up to standard at the weekend. So that's something that people, at the higher echelons of the SFA should really be having a serious look at themselves at about already 50 minutes in, Quinny. Matthew Anderson, let's have a wee chat about him. He's not a person that I've spoken about too much in this podcast. We've spoken about Bosun Lowell, we've spoken about Rocco Vata. Benny Summers has latterly came into that conversation. But the other day, Tuesday, it came out that Matthew had signed a new deal at the club until 2025. He's currently the B team captain. He's still a young man in terms of that. And as I say, I had the opportunity to speak to the manager on Tuesday. A couple of hours after that was announced, and I'd asked him about Anderson, about committing his future to the club. And really, really interesting, Quinny, that Ange Postecoglou said he's one of a number of players in the B team who you should expect to make an impact in the first team in the next 6 to 12 months. What do you make of that kind of comment?
That is very interesting, yeah. Because, like, yeah, that's a good one. Because it's I don't follow the B team like ultimate closely, so it's I didn't realize that its contract and all that had been done this week. But yeah, to hear the manager make such a comment like that, it definitely does raise the attention, because the team is so stacked. You know, we didn't really talk about the midfield last night. We kind of touched on Hatate's excellence and a wee bit of bits and bobs, but like, you know, like the whole team is double. You know, that we've spoken about the forwards, the defense, the midfield. Like everyone, there's two to a position. You know, so to have such a, you know, it's not necessarily a guarantee, but it's such a brash statement to make. You know, like expect to see this. You know, like
I was quite surprised because you know the mainstream's not going to ask it, and I always think as fan media, I know a lot of the other guys and girls that do this always try and ask questions that are in the interest of ourselves as fans. You know, we want to see not just the 11 players in the park, but everything else that goes on in the background there. I get really good insight into James Forrest working with Harry Kewell the other day, who was talking about, you know, helping him when he was only playing a game a week, doing extra drills with the players, being late. You're selling Saturday, you wouldn't have seen this, but everybody had went in my head, I was still in the park doing drills with Harry Kewell. It was only they two from the team that was left out there, apart from the subs. It's
nice.
really good to get insights like that, I think, for us as fans, and that's been one of the great things with fan media getting in there, that you're able to ask questions that the mainstream press just aren't asking, because it's not going to be a newspaper headline for them. But to me, this was quite a headline grabber, and I was really kind of taken aback by how positive the comments were about this. Celtic FCB actually tweeted it out in their official Twitter account too, which I was pretty chuffed about. But to take the quote directly, it says, over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, they'll start to make an impact at first team level. I really believe that. And he's talked about Matthew Anderson, Bosun Labo, Benny Summers, and Rocco Vata in that conversation. And Anderson's one who I've noticed a wee bit, because he's the captain, obviously. But from other people that's went along to watch them, they've been saying he's one of the standout players. He plays left back and he wears the kit number 63. Does that remind you of somebody?
Wow. That's lovely. A left back for the number 63, captain.
Yep.
That's nice.
And the Celtic,
good vibes to be had from that for sure. Because again, like we do have Juranovic in at left back at the moment, and there is obviously still work to be done with Bernabé, the manager believes. You know, like I've kind of seen in the appearances that he's had, like he is clearly not quite, you know, finished article level. And I think the absence of him, like it's probably a little bit of Juranovic getting shop window time, you know, especially after that horrible
be back
performance
in
in
the
the
weekend,
derby.
Bernabé, I would imagine. I think Bernabé will start against Morton.
Yeah, I could see that as well for sure. But yeah, so like, but again, when Taylor's fit, like Taylor's like immovable, I think, you know. So, but no, it's that's great to hear that he's 63 as well. That's fantastic.
He's only 18 too, so you know there's plenty of time there, plenty of promise. But I just thought it was a really positive thing to come out of that, you know, because I wasn't expecting something, you know, as kind of impactful from that as a manager. You know, sometimes, you know, when you maybe ask those questions about the B team, you're expecting, you know, I can answer about him, you know, he's improving every week and what else. But to come out with something like that, I think it's pretty bold, and it's something that I would trust him saying. You know, but we know that Ange Postecoglou doesn't say things if he doesn't mean it. And again, you know,
But he
having
does like
had,
to tell a few porcupines. He
well,
has been.
that's only when it comes to the benefit the team to tell some porcupines. That's absolutely fine. But when it's generally about the
Yeah,
team,
I know, but I totally believe him in this instance, of course.
no. But you know, having a Dan a day on the podcast, that is there. If anybody's not checked it out while you're doing that, and you're clicking the mouse, you can link the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Get that plug in there just now. When we spoke to Dan about it, you know, he'd spoken about how much him and Stevie McManus talked to Ange, and he's saying that he sees clear improvements in the team. They are in the mix at the top of that league just now. Great result against Wolves. They're down there playing in a tournament to beat Wolves. They're like 4-2, and so a great result. And he's seen that improvement happens, and it's quite nice to see that. And if we get to that point, when in the next 6 to 12 months, basically towards the back end of this season, if there's some game time availability for some of these guys, I'm really excited with that, because that's what we want to see. And that Celtic can go out and shop in markets, but you've also got some guys that are champing the door that are academy graduates that are coming through into the first team.
Yeah, and Boston Labang as well, and Rocco Vata on top of that. Like that's the names that we've heard for a while, and we've been
Benny Summers is another one,
and Summers as well. We would want to see them get into the picture, So I think there's still a little bit of dead wood to clear the way for them. But actually, that maybe takes, in terms of spots and that kind of thing. Like one person we've not really spoke about from last night that I was eager to get your take on is Turnbull. Yeah, Turnbull. Yeah. So what do you reckon? He'll play against Morton, I reckon, for sure. But the celebration, he walks away with a wee no big shakes.
It's a typical Turnbull goal, knuckleball or whatever you want to call it. Takes some curve on it. Fantastic strike. He obviously made the goal for Giakoumakis at the weekend, having a dig too. Guy on my bus last night said, he's too good a player to be in the bench for us every week. He'll probably be looking elsewhere, but he's still really young, David Turnbull. He's still, I think, got a bit to develop. He's obviously had that injury problem towards the back end last season, I think he played in every game under Ange Postecoglou. But, in terms of where I would say midfielders are, in terms of, who's the stick-on being Callum McGregor, who's always kind of in there, it's Hatate, O'Reilly, it's then probably Aaron Moy, then David Turnbull. Iwata coming in, I don't really know where that puts him. But again, I think he's a good footballer. He's got that in his locker, and he can certainly play the system. What's your take on things, Quinny? Because, I don't know if there was any interest in David Turnbull, what kind of price tag he would go for. As I say, I think he's a good player. As long as he's happy in and around the squad, he's certainly a player that I would look to have in and around the team, because I think he's a decent player.
Yeah, I've not really seen there being room in the squad for him when he's been directly rotated with Hatate, because they're very different to what they do on that left side of midfield. But for anyone that paid attention to this kind of thing, when he came on last night, Turnbull actually more replaced O'Reilly on the right-hand side and Moy went onto the left. So he was then... in Turnbull, you want Turnbull in the final third. You want him in attacking midfield. That's his bread and butter. That's his optimal position. And yeah, maybe just because of the way we play, you do expect him to cover positions and track back, and he needs to do that stuff if he's not doing it to the manager's expectations. But ultimately, like playing in that job that Rio does, peeling out left and doing interplays on the wide area and tracking up and down the line, playing with the ball that way, I don't think suits him. I don't think there's a place in the Celtic team for him doing that. But when you see him come on for O'Reilly and going into attacking midfield, you can get goals like that out of him. He got the assist for Giakoumakis in the semi-final as well, I'm sure, if memory serves me right.
That's what I'm saying. It says short. Yeah, it says short.
Yeah.
And he's only 23 at this point in time, Turnbull, but just had a wee quick look, their contract's up next year. So you'll see movement on that probably, in the next 6 months' time, that Celtic will either offer him a new deal, which you'd want to do, whether he's a keeper or where he's going to go. But as I say, I think he's a good player. I always like kind of having those homegrown players in and around the team. Wouldn't really surprise me, but we've spoken about Scottish football almost being a kind of feeder to Serie A. If a team, we're having a wee look at him,
he would do great in Italy.
People would put him in that kind of similar mould with a guy like Lewis Ferguson. I think he's a better player than Lewis Ferguson. But looking at his game time this season, he's played 24 games. So it's not as if he's no featured at all for Celtic. I mean, that's a fair amount of games. When he played 17 Premiership games, 5 in the Champions League and 2 in the League Cup, 3 goals, 5 assists. Not a bad record either. That's kind of contributing every 1 in 3 games. I mean, a lot of that times probably came off the bench. So, but
League and Champions League, he's only made 6 starts in the last 6 months.
Aye. But minutes wise, it's just looking here. I'm just using Transfer Market as my guide here, which isn't always bang on. It's 17 games in the Premiership, and it's 650 minutes. So it's in terms of minutes wise compared to game time, probably not what they're looking for, but he has featured a good bit for Celtic this season.
Yeah, for sure. But I think he's much better. He's a much better foil. He's a much better squad competition for O'Reilly, I think. And maybe we've not really seen the opportunity in the squad for, like, since Moy came in, we had McGregor injured also for the most part of that. So maybe a big part of the thinking for the manager is Moy and Rio becomes the automated substitution. And then that means Turnbull can be more of the attacking rotator with O'Reilly. Because sometimes when we've seen Moy come on for O'Reilly, it's not been that great.
But what then happens with Iwata? There's the issue now.
McGregor. That's, he's the CDM. That's what he's meant to be anyway. So it's rotation relief for him, or maybe it is for O'Reilly. If you're not going to put Turnbull on, you're not going to keep attacking the team, you might try and stop back, maybe want McGregor to go forward. So maybe then he's got a bit of a Wata to worry about. But Moy might be much more of a Rio swapper.
So you're looking at actually kind of 6 in. McGregor, Iwata, O'Reilly, Hatate, Moy, Turnbull is the kind of the 6 in there. Players. Yeah. Aye.
Haksabanovic has the ability to do that
and
as well for like 10 minutes
the ability to drop into. But it was a great goal, as I say. But I think you're bang on. We'll see him probably play against Morton at the weekend. We'll see who else play against Morton at the weekend. I expect another wee bit of rotation, and the team might even be a chance to see somebody like Rocco Vata come on from the bench again. Quinny, pleasure as always. It's been a quick hour with 2 games to digest. Celtic back in another final in the Viaplay Cup final. We'll take on Rangers next month, the 26th of February. We'll all be looking forward to that. And we've got Morton up first in the Scottish Cup this weekend, so we'll be digesting that next week when we're back on before the visit to Tannadice. As I say, if you've been watching, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. Have a good week, everyone. Quinny, pleasure as always, and hail, hail.